No one said you could touch.
Kane is in the building.
Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, Ninzendo here, back again with another video. And this time I won't call it a viewer request, but one of my subscribers, sent in a link to an article. Not really an article, but a blog post, right? And it was really interesting. It was an amazing read. Now, the person that sent that in is Suzaku, yet again. Thank you. Shout out goes to you. You are awesome. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be reading part of this blog post. And this guy, what's his name? John Lucas, I believe. Let's check that real quick. Yes, John Lucas, the writer of the blog. He really knocks it out of the park. He starts with a brief history of his posts on VG charts and otherwise. He then goes into what he thought about the Wii versus 360 versus PS3 history. He says a lot on that. He then talks about the launch of the 3DS and the Wii U. However, I'm going to start reading about halfway through, and it's here that he really nails it when it comes to third parties, their support for Nintendo, or should I say lack thereof, and certain companies. But I'm not going to spoil it for you, I'm just going to read it, right? So that you will get it at the point where you're supposed to. So here goes, and I quote, he says, it wasn't until E3 2013 and the unveiling of Microsoft's Xbox One that it all came together for me. The Xbox One presentation sent such a bolt of lightning through my mind that now I knew why Nintendo did what they have been doing the past couple of years. Stop for a second. He's talking about the fact that he was initially disappointed with the way Nintendo handled the 3DS launch and the Wii U launch. The way they seem to have abandoned, according to him, the revolution, so to speak, what they started with the Wii Remote and Nunchuck, and instead settling on something more, basic with the gamepad, right? So he honestly believed, and I come to believe him through his words, that he was disappointed with that. I understand. I personally wasn't, but I understand. Also, just to make sure that I say this, I don't necessarily agree with everything he says here, but he does make a lot of very good points. But anyway, continuing, I quote, the irresponsibility of Microsoft with those disastrous DRM policies signaled their inability of ever becoming the leader of this business while underlining why Nintendo remains the leader. It showed the ultimate end if third-party developers ever got full command of this business. Sony was getting nowhere with the PlayStation Vita, even though I liked their approach this time around. And it proved that they really don't know what it takes to challenge Nintendo in the handheld realm, much less challenge the onslaught of the smartphones. People hacked their PSPs to play Nintendo games on them, for God's sake. Sony and Microsoft's platforms were always third-party centric, while Sony and Microsoft are not necessarily game makers at heart. Nintendo's platforms are always first-party centric since Nintendo is a game maker at heart. Stop for a second. That is very true. Very true, and it shows every single time Nintendo releases a game. It also shows that Sony and Microsoft really don't have too much of a first-party presence. Sure, they have a few games, but I don't want to get too much into the discussion right here. So continuing on, I quote, we have been at this crossroads between first/second party and the third party ever since the exodus to the PlayStation in the mid-1990s. Nintendo proved that they could virtually go it alone and not just survive, but succeed beyond imagination. And this terrifies the third-party developers. That's the real reason why they didn't get behind the Wii. Politics, not horsepower. So why did the third party sabotage the Nintendo revolution? Because of one of my favorite sayings, first party plus second party plus third party equals Nintendo's party. If the third party ever got square behind Nintendo with support, they lose their political leverage in the business. Microsoft and Sony's platforms are the vehicles for their political leverage, and with the Xbox One, you got a taste of things to come should they run this industry outright. VG Chart's game database tells the absolute truth. Nintendo rules the best-selling games of all time. You have to be the biggest of the biggest third-party titles like Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty to even be seen near the top of that list. And that doesn't even start until number 16 with PS2's Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. That means the top 10 of all time are all Nintendo. And the top 50/top 100 are mostly Nintendo. Jak and Daxter, Killzone are nice. Forza Motorsport and Fable are decent. But nothing Nintendo and Microsoft's first-party teams can put out compared to the power of Nintendo's first-party. Stop. That is true. That is extremely true. There are people who are getting tired of Killzone. There are people who are getting tired of Halo. Fable is more or less dead. Peter Molyneux left Lionhead and now he's doing phone games. So you can clearly see that these first-party efforts do not nearly have as much push, as much force, as much longevity as Nintendo titles tend to be. Take it this way, for example. The drones and the media at large love to say that Nintendo's rehashing their titles. Mario, Zelda, Metroid, right? But at the same time, each time these games come out, they sell. And they sell a lot. Compare this to the 10 or so years that the first party, 10 to 15 years, that the first party of Microsoft and Sony respectively have existed. And how fed up some people are of them already. And immediately you see the difference in the dynamic there. Anyway, continuing. Where was I? I looked away and now I cannot find where I was. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Right. Sorry about that, I lost where I was. So, the closest they ever got was with Gran Turismo and Halo. One series apiece from them versus many from Nintendo. Nintendo sold you homework, called it Brain Age, and sold 20 million apiece. Easy. Alright? Hardly any big graphics on that game. They came up with an exercising routine, packed in a bathroom scale that also measures balance, called it Wii Fit, and sold 40 million units. Limited graphics there too. He goes on to say, don't even get me started on Pikmin. It's so... not Pikmin, Pokemon. It's so big, it's got its own company within Nintendo. Look for the Pokemon company on the label. In order for the third parties to even see Nintendo's milestones reliably, they need to sell on multiple platforms. Nintendo sells on just one, their own. And how much marketing money goes into hyping up these games to make their sales compared to Nintendo's marketing? Think about that for a second. Don't think the third parties aren't aware of this. Don't think it doesn't horrify them. They're scared of Nintendo. Absolutely in fear. The gaming press promotes Sony and Microsoft's platforms out the wazoo, while usually throwing shade at anything Nintendo produces. They write the hierarchies of platforms on the front page, often writing Nintendo's last in the lineup. GameStop puts Nintendo's merchandise at the back of the store in a smaller space, and it doesn't matter. Nintendo still sells. You always hear calls for Nintendo to get out of the hardware business, to start making software for other companies like Sega does, to go handheld only, when they have absolutely no need to with the resources that they have. The third party needs this kind of noise to stand a chance. Stop. And that right there, that paragraph, that is where he blew it the F away. It makes sense now. The anti-Nintendo conspiracy makes sense now. Now, I'm not going to say so much as all of these guys are in it together, although that is a possibility, right? I'm not saying they're all connected, they're all communicating, and they're all doing this as a unified effort. I'm going to approach it differently, however it's going to have the same result. I think that they all came to the same conclusion, albeit at different times, and are doing similar actions to achieve the very same goal. That is what I'm thinking. Right? So, yeah, it exists. This conspiracy is real, people. And he really lays it out here. So he continues on with an analogy. I quote, I said it before, I'll say it again. Nintendo is dad. The third party are the kids. In the NES days, the kids had to abide by dad's rule in dad's house. And the kids were always chafed at dad's rules. They spent some time at next door neighbor Sega's house, but even though Sega was a little more lenient than Pops, Sega had his rules too. But when they had a chance to hang out with Uncle Sony, I laugh at this, the kids fled dad's house and only visited dad on their terms. Uncle Sony let them run the household any way they wanted, and they got used to calling the shots, staying up late hours, partying through the night, binge drinking, and other wild, reckless behavior. Freedom! Then the big, flashy spender Mr. Microsoft moved into town. They left Uncle Sony's house in shambles, and they started gallivanting around with this pimp dressed in green. They became unhealthy and destructive the more they hung out with Mr. Microsoft, as opposed to the relatively mild mayhem they caused at Uncle Sony's house. Dad worried about his kids' future and offered them a place to come home. He would be a kinder, gentler dad than the sterner one he was before. We are family, Dad said. But the kids have been out on their own for too long and are committed to their self-destructive cycle. The family can't die, and now Dad is going to stage an intervention. So, that is a little analogy, and you know it makes a lot of sense, right? Continuing here. Unity. That is what the U in Wii U stands for. This is what Wii U is all about. Nintendo is aiming to make this the last console war. They aborted the Wii, or continuing the Wii, to continue the revolution on the Wii U. A very brutal decision, a very brutal version of their third pillar strategy that we saw with the DS overshadowing the GBA in its prime. Iwata told you in 2004 at E3, the time when horsepower alone made a difference is over. And it is. And the Wii proved it. The Wii proved it. Over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. DS proved it against the PSP. 3DS is proving it against the Vita. That's why Wii U gets a little above PS3 and 360 in graphics. This is not the era of the NES to SNES, when the jump from 8-bit to 16-bit made you go wow. This is not the era of SNES to N64, when the jump from 2D sprites to 3D polygons made you go wow. This is not the era of N64 to GameCube, when the smoothening of polygons made you go yeah. Once the 7th gen refined graphical displays the way you can draw cartoonish depiction or a realistic depiction direct from your imagination, and it was accurate. That was the basic end of graphics. Sure, they could always be refined more in the future, but the payoff is much less than it was in the past, and that is the law of diminishing returns. Nintendo finally gave you HD visuals when creating HD visuals was more affordable. The Unity engine allows easier possibility of third-party franchises to Wii U platform with the common developer tools. This will result in less expensive company destroying game budgets, as well as the reliance on overly expensive budgets to sell games. Here he blows it out of the park yet again. I quote, it used to be called Squaresoft and Enix. Now it's called Square Enix. It used to be called Namco. Now it's Namco Bandai. It used to be called Sega. Now it's Sega Sammy. Midway is dead. THQ is dead. Hudson is dead / absorbed. Konami has shrunk in output. Capcom has become greedy and desperate. Activision and Electronic Arts have bought, is buying, will be buying out every smaller studio they can get their hands on and locking up almost all American game development, and not for the better. Relying on the big budget blockbuster just to make sales is unsustainable, and making games just to fit the fiscal calendar is irresponsible. Nintendo delayed Zelda on the Nintendo 64 launch simply because it wasn't ready. We got Ocarina of Time as a result, a true classic. Imagine if Sega did the same with Aliens Colonial Marines. Imagine if more game companies took this very same approach. He goes on saying, we saved the industry from the crash of the 7th generation. Remember when it was known for 99% of the industry's entire growth? But the third parties are hell-bent on creating the same crash in the 8th generation. The only responsible one around here is Nintendo. They created the Wii U the way they did it to cover all the bases. Look at that Pro Controller for a second. It's the Xbox 360 version of the NES gamepad designed to reel in all those 360 players who refuse to touch a Wii controller. Look at the Wii U tablet controller, aka the gamepad. It's there to tap into the iPad fans, drawing them into Nintendo's world. Wii U is fully backward compatible with Wii so that they'll retain their old audience while giving them new features to play along with. They have the seamless Nintendo network, so no more worrying about friend codes. Even at $350, it's still cheaper than what the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One are offering, and even at $60 games will be cheaper than the others. And that early start gives them room to drop the price against the PS4 and the One when they launch. It is true that they bungled up the transition from DS to 3DS and Wii to Wii U. That's the reason for the setback. Nobody's perfect, but mark my words, Wii U will be on the same trajectory as the 3DS when this is all said and done. Finally, he ends with, I said it here, I'll say it now, Wii U will be the leader of the 8th generation consoles by far. It will outsell the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 handily throughout the generation. And should the revolution go as planned, this will be the last console war between Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. Wii U obtains what was denied to Wii. Wii U at last becomes everybody's console. Lastly, he says, oh, and you want a number? Here's one for you. 12 million Wii U's sold by December 31st, 2013. I don't see that happening. Here's another. 35 million Wii U's sold by December 31st, 2014. Here's one more. 60 million Wii U's sold by December 31st, 2015. And here's the unbelievable one. He says, one more for the road, 240 million lifetime Wii U sales. That is a realm of never, but you know, this blog really blew it out of the park. Oh, there's actually one more part. One more paragraph. He says, Wii U is Wii Part 2. This standoff must end. The kids are coming home off the streets. Nintendo will finish the revolution through Wii U and bring unity to the gaming industry at last. No more hardcore versus casual, it's just gamers. While Nintendo is proven to succeed without third party, this long-standing division in the gaming industry must finally be healed. Remember now, what object is shaped like a U? A magnet. Think about that. It's all about Dad's house. The first party still rules. So that was John Lucas's blog, or part of it. And honestly, he knocked it out of the park. He blew it up. They're accurate. I don't agree with some of the numbers he posted, but you see, that's just it. Those numbers would have been possible if it wasn't for the delay, but it's going to have 3DS numbers. I'm seeing it now. It mightn't go on to sell 100 million like the Wii did, but it will do well. The haters are absolutely wrong with this console. But what he says about the third parties and the fact that they're absolutely terrified, there is some truth to this. There is some truth to this, right? Where he talks about Squaresoft and Enix and Square Enix and all of that, right? And how these companies are buying themselves, like Activision had to buy themselves back from Vivendi just a week ago or something like that. An $8 billion buyout, and all these other companies merging with other companies, being bought by bigger companies, THQ going out of business, Midway dying, Sega Sammy, Hudson Soft, Konami shrinking in output, and that's true. Capcom and their obvious desperation with their greed and launching the same game 10 million times. Of course, what I'm talking about is Street Fighter 4. It is true. It is absolutely true. This is as much evidence as you'll ever get towards this conspiracy, this anti-Nintendo conspiracy. And I will end this video off with one thing. And it's a saying I got from Boondocks, of all places. And it goes like this. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. I repeat. The absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. Think about that for a second. And that's basically it for this video. I just wanted to bring attention to that. So John Lucas, that's a standing ovation, my friend. You blew it out of the park. It was well written, it was entertaining, it was funny. I'll have a link in the description down below to this. You can read it in its entirety. What I read was just about half of it. So there's a lot more that I didn't read for you guys. So thank you, John Lucas. Clap to you. You deserve a standing ovation for this, man. That was a masterpiece. Suzaku, thank you for sending this in. You are awesome. Shout out goes to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls all around the world, thank you for watching. I'm Ninzendo, and I'm out. Deuces. Be sure to leave your comments in the comment section below. I want to know what you guys think about this. So, I'll catch you guys later.